Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am just going to go ahead and share my slides to introduce our webinar today. Hopefully everyone can see this. Our webinar today is called Nervous System Informed Yoga for Holistic Healing. Our presenter is Joann Lutz, who I will introduce in just a second. And I'll be the moderator. My name is Shira Collings, and I'm the grant coordinator for the National Empowerment Center. This webinar was developed in part under grant number SM062560 from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of the Center for Mental Health Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. There is closed captioning available for this webinar. You can click on the CC or more to view closed captioning. You can also view the entire transcript of the meeting by clicking on Show Transcript. And this webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be posted to the National Empowerment website at power2u, the number 2, the letter u.org. If you do not wish to be seen on the recording, you are welcome to turn off your camera. And at the end of the webinar, there will be a Q&A session. We reserve the last 25 to 30 minutes for that. You are invited to ask questions at any time through the chat function, and we will do our best to answer all questions. If we do not answer your question, you're welcome to email us at info4@power2u.org, and we'll do our best to get back to you. And you're also welcome to make comments using the chat function. So feel free to just introduce yourself, share where you're joining us from, and just this webinar is going to be interactive, so feel free to participate in that way. And I will now introduce our presenter, Joann Lutz, developer of nervous system informed trauma sensitive yoga, recovered from a serious depression using yoga techniques. Yoga helped her to regulate her nervous system, as well as giving her a spiritual foundation, a community, a healthy lifestyle, and a vision for a peaceful world. She is the author of the book Trauma Healing in the Yoga Zone, a research paper, Classical Yoga Postures as Psychotherapeutic Interventions for Autonomic Nervous System Regulation, and a CE course, Bringing Yoga into Social Work Practice. She is certified in Ayurvedic yoga therapy through the Sivananda Yoga Vedanta Centers, in integral yoga, in EMDR, and psychosynthesis. She has been practicing yoga since 1970 and teaching since 1980. She is also a licensed social worker, and you can see her website on the slide. So I am so grateful that Joann, that you're here today and presenting, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Shira. I want to make this presentation without my PowerPoint slides so that I can have more person-to-person contact with you. And also, although I have been a professional in the field, I want to be here today as a survivor of the mental health system rather than in my professional self, because I have both. So that event in 1970 was horrifying to me. I went from being a healthy person, as far as I knew, to being a very depressed mental patient. And I was not hospitalized because my parents were willing to take care of me. And the psychiatrist didn't, he was a little bit negative about hospitalization back then. That was unusual. But he did put me on medication. There was not very much psychiatric medication available at that time. So he put me on Thorazine and other mind numbing drugs, and it turned me into an invalid immediately. However, I was very lucky because I had discovered a book on yoga a few weeks before this happened, and I was very interested in it. So I found a yoga class in my town and started taking the class, and it became a lifeline for me because the practices themselves made me feel much better, more energetic, more present. And also, I had something to do every day, which made me feel like I was valuable. So, and it connected me with a community of people, some of the things that you just heard Shira read. So it's been really wonderful. That I've been practicing it ever since, and it's made a big difference for me. I wrote an article about this in the 1990s for the National Empowerment Center newsletter because I was very impressed with this organization. So I've been following it for a long time. So I experienced the beneficial effects of doing yoga, which helped me recover from that major depression, which has never come back. And I always wondered what it was about yoga that was so healing. And so I continued to stay on top of that topic. And in the early 2000s, I noticed that there was a new movement in yoga to bring it into the mental health field and to connect it with neuroscience. So I jumped right on that, and I took a training with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and his staff. You may have heard of him. He wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is a very important and popular book right now. So I learned all about my autonomic nervous system. I did not know anything about it before. Even in social work school, psychotherapy was seen as something for the mind and the emotions, but not for the body at all. And studies of traumatic brains have showed that trauma affects the body first. And so it's very important to work with the body in order to overcome the effects of trauma. But not only that, it may be trauma that actually is the basis of a lot of mental disorders. A person's nervous system becomes stuck in certain unintegrated experiences, and that creates all kinds of symptoms, which we then have to live with. So it's not about a chemical imbalance in this model, although there may be a resulting chemical imbalance. It's because the body's not functioning correctly, particularly the nervous system. And amazingly enough, that's exactly what yoga practice focuses on. There is no doubt about it. The ancient yogis must have known how our nervous system worked because they created, in my opinion, a very powerful way to re-regulate it. Because when your nervous system is not regulated, there's two possible outcomes, basically. One of them is that your sympathetic branch, which is the branch that gives us energy and focus, that branch of the nervous system becomes overactive due to threat. And it creates a fight or flight response inside of us. You may have heard of that before. So we're hyper, we can't sit still, we're always on alert for danger, and our muscles are tense. There's all kinds of signs of that. So that's one kind of nervous system dysregulation, sympathetic nervous system overexcitation. And then there's the other end of that polarity, which is depression, lethargy, confusion, lack of energy. And that has to do with the malfunction of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, parasympathetic system, its normal function is to restore our bodies It's called rest and digest. And so it's a very important and positive function. But if a person is under threat, or if they feel like they're under threat, and they're not able to run away or fight the threat, then maybe in its wisdom, the parasympathetic branch starts shutting down our functioning on a very low level of energy. And so that conserves energy. And in animals, it allows them not to be seen if they're not moving. And maybe that could save their life if there's a predator on the loose. But so in the human, that is the result. And so there are, in my opinion, psychiatric diagnoses that are connected to those two malfunctions of the autonomic nervous system. As you can see, if someone is sympathetically overactivated all the time, then they could be diagnosed with anxiety or panic attacks, those kinds of diagnoses. And if someone is kind of stuck in this parasympathetic shutdown, then they could be diagnosed with dysthymia, depression, catatonia is the ultimate. So this is the connection between mental health and the psychiatric diagnoses, is rebalancing the autonomic nervous system. And there are a lot of simple ways in the body where you can see that operating. For example, in the breath. Every time we take one full breath, we're activating the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. It's most activated at the top of the inhale. And then at the bottom of the exhale, the parasympathetic branch is at its peak, most influential in the body. So, and every time we breathe, we're experiencing the full spectrum of our autonomic nervous system. In a healthy person or a regulated person, so there's an alternation all the time between sympathetic and parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. It's a very healthy polarity. It shows up in the heartbeat also with something called heart rate variability. You may have heard of that. So there, and there are other cycles in the body which are influenced by this pattern. Yoga will help someone to bring over sympathetic arousal down into a more comfortable zone, and it can help bring someone who is depressed up into a more energized zone. It's one of the Eastern meditative movement disciplines that does that. And so the results, if the yoga that you're doing matches the kind of regulating that you need, then you are in really good shape. So it requires some knowledge of yoga to decide which postures are the best ones for you, or which breathing practices are the best ones for you. It's not a one size fits all kind of discipline. And as we go on, I'm going to teach you a few postures and tell you what kind of healing they offer. Okay, so let's continue on here. So you may have heard of the functioning of the vagus nerve. It's gotten a lot of publicity lately. It's the longest nerve in the body, of the cranial nerves, and it's the only cranial nerve which extends below the neck. So by a cranial nerve, I mean that it starts in the primitive brain at the base, at the top of the spine here, at the base of the skull. and that is the most primitive part of the brain. And its function is survival. So that's um, that's what it's all about. So these dysregulations actually have some type of survival value in the short term. But if they continue on and on and on, then they're going to start to hurt your body and your experience of life. Um, so let's see. Yeah, so um, someone who stays in that overexcited realm for a long, long time um, may uh, develop more and more symptoms and be less able to function in this culture and less able to feel their body sensations, less able to connect with people, and less able to connect with the environment. And those are big disabilities. Um, so there's a focus on working with this part of the brain at the bottom of the skull called the reptilian brain or the primitive brain, which is where this survival patterns are located. And so that's where the vagus nerve starts, and it continues down the body. It connects with all of the facial features, the senses, the eyes, the mouth, the hearing, um, and then part of it continues down below there to the diaphragm and all the digestive organs. So there's a connection between this dysregulation and facial tension, kind of a flat voice, difficulty hearing the human voice as distinguished from other background sounds, generally a lot of tension in the body. And then there can be digestive problems if this kind of um, dysregulated state lasts for a long time. And so those are some of the accompaniments to what's considered to be mental illness. It's also difficult to think when one is dysregulated. Actually, there's a lot of different signs of that, but one of them is if the muscles are tight in the back of your neck, and then it's difficult for blood to get to the brain. So it's actually a physiological thing. And then when the blood flow is not sufficient, then a person can be confused, difficult time thinking, get into more of a fight or flight or freeze response. So that the health of the vagus nerve is very important. And as it turns out, yoga also focuses on activating the vagus nerve and keeping it healthy. So the ancients must have known about that also. The vagus nerve also gets messages from the body to relay them to the brain about how threatened or how relaxed the whole organism is. It's an important communicator. Okay, so I'd like to have us do a little bit of experiencing the autonomic nervous system. So why don't you start by tensing up your muscles and tensing up the muscles of your face, like squeezing them together. And as you do that, you're increasing the sympathetic tone. And I'd like you to, while you do it, notice what's happening to your body. Notice if there's any changes in your experience of what's happening in your body. And squeezing tighter, tighter. And then when you're ready, release. And you can write it in the chat if you noticed anything happening in your body as a result of that very brief example of a heightened sympathetic state. And then you can take a moment and let it go. Take a breath. And then to experience the parasympathetic state, you can relax as many muscles as you can find. So you're letting the head hang, you're letting the arms hang. I don't know if you're sitting up, you may slump over and notice if there's any change in your experience of your body in that state. And notice in particular if there's a change in your breath. And then you can let that go. And again, if something significant happened, you can write it in the chat. And then we can move more into the experience of yoga and what the effect is. So if you don't mind, I'm going to start by chanting Om. There is an energetic and spiritual dimension of that, but it's not necessary to think about that because it has a healing effect on the body. So I'm just going to chant. You can join me if you want to. And so first, take a slow, deep breath if you're joining me. And then an exhale. Then inhaling halfway. And exhale. Even doing it briefly, you may have noticed a vibration of the face. There's a movement of the movable bones in your inner ear. There's a mobilization of your larynx and pharynx to make the sound. These all stimulate the vagus nerve. And also it slows the breath down, which is very healing. It's the shape and depth and pace of the breath is very important. So slowing it down brings us into a more relaxed and parasympathetic state. So I'm starting with the Om because the yoga class that I learned many years ago does start with that chant. This was the yoga from the Integral Yoga Institute, which was founded by Swami Satchidananda. But there are many forms of yoga now, and many of them are healing. So the significant thing is to find the kind of yoga that works for you. So now we're going to focus on the postures. There's 3 essential factors which make a posture effective, regulating the autonomic nervous system. One of them is the shape of the pose, the pace that it's practiced, and the effort that the individual uses to get into the pose. So, for example, there are backward bending poses and forward bending poses. Now, the backward bending poses stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. That one that gives us focus and energy by requiring an outward focus, by using muscular effort, requiring physical strength, and a mental focus to hold the pose. So I can demonstrate one just a little bit. For example, the seated cobra pose. I'm going to arch my back, bring my shoulder blades closer together and raise my head just a little bit. I find I can breathe more deeply. And I'm definitely using muscular effort to hold the pose. Now that increases sympathetic activity, as I mentioned. There are a lot of backward bending poses in yoga, and they each have different benefits for the body, but all of them help to upregulate the sympathetic nervous system, the that branch. So, and that's what I'm interested in applying yoga to mental health care, is the effect on the autonomic nervous system. So why don't we do that together for a moment? You can sit, I don't know, if you're sitting up with your feet flat on the floor, your hands can be on your lap or your knees. You can notice the breath now, taking one inhale and an exhale. And on the next inhale, you can start to arch the spine, bringing the shoulder blades together, feeling a natural raising of the head, just a few inches, and take 3 breaths on your own in this pose. And after your 3rd exhale, you can let the breath return to normal. Now, again, even in that short experience, you may have noticed the breath changing, the breath pattern changing. I certainly did. It deepened for me. You may have felt that tension in your back and shoulder muscles, and felt your feet more firmly planted on the floor. So that can have an effect for someone, a positive effect for someone who's a little bit shut down, a little bit depressed, because it gets the energy moving. So for, as I mentioned, if you need a little lift, if you need a little more energy, you can do backward bending pose. Now, if you're anxious, tense, panicky, you can use a forward bending pose to bring your nervous system back down toward balance. So I'm going to teach this to you while I demonstrate it, because it's so simple. I chose one simple pose in each shape for the presentation today. So this is a forward bending pose, which allows the muscles to relax. It allows your awareness to go more inside. Your eyes sometimes close if you feel safe. And so let's try it together so it can calm you down. So we can be seated now, inhaling. And as we exhale, we can slowly, from the waist, bring the whole torso down over the legs. And if you don't have any head injuries or high blood pressure or heart disease, you can let your head hang right down over your legs. I'm not going to do that right now myself. But take a few breaths in that position. See what it's like breathing. Why don't you take 2 more breaths on your own? And after your next exhale, you can let the breath return to normal and slowly, again, keeping the back straight, slowly come back into a seated position with your head in line with your spine. You can look around the room for a moment if you'd like, connecting with the environment with your eyes. it's even very healthy to let your eyes go where they want to go sometime, rather than always directing them. So let's see if your eyes are attracted to anything in your environment. Um, it feels freeing to me. So just let the eyes go, and freeing and relaxing. And I feel a little bit more secure because I'm connecting with my environment. Because something I didn't emphasize enough is that feeling safe is the most important aspect of nervous system regulation. If a person doesn't feel safe in their environment, yoga's not really going to have much of an effect. Like if there's a real threat, or if they're freezing cold, or so many different ways that we can be, that we can feel unsafe. Um, that's what we're really after. In addition to knowing what we can do to change our nervous system, but sometimes we really are safe in our environment, but we don't feel safe because of bad things that have happened to us in the past that are not yet resolved. So, and that's perfectly legitimate, to be in a safe environment and not to feel safe, or to be with safe people but not to trust them or not to feel safe. That's part of the healing process, is slowly to recognize it, and then through different types of therapies, perhaps being able to let that go eventually, and experiencing life the way it is in the moment, rather than having all of these old experiences interfere with that. That's one thing that I think is a wonderful goal in therapy. Yeah. So for some people, having connection with another human being can make them feel safe. And then that's a wonderful resource, to look at someone and, enjoy the liveliness in their eyes, or the relaxed muscles in their face, or the sound of their voice, their smile. That can do a lot to help regulate someone's nervous system too. And that can be a part of yoga also, if you have a teacher who you trust and who seems to be relaxed, or if you have a therapist. A therapist can also be a great source of safety if they are regulated, and if you trust them, if somehow you've been able to connect and feel a caring. So that's another factor here to take into consideration. It's not really going to help to be in some environment where you don't feel safe. And there have been types of yoga in the past which were not particularly safe, where a teacher may have tried to control the students, trying to push them beyond their limits, or being like surprising them, coming up behind them, touching them without their permission. Those kinds of behaviors make someone feel unsafe. And then the effect of yoga is kind of lost. That's why Dr. Vanderkolk and his staff developed trauma-sensitive yoga to let teachers know that they have certain behaviors that may be threatening to some students. So also that's important to make sure that if you're studying yoga, that you choose someone who's aware of that. There's a lot of trainings available, so that it's easy for yoga teachers to get that kind of training if they want to. So hopefully yoga is becoming safer and safer now. There are also psychotherapists who are trained as yoga teachers. And so they hopefully can develop a yoga routine just for you, and help you feel more safe doing these different body positions slowly and with great attention. I mean, they will instruct you in a way that really works for you. Um, so there are also twisting poses, just like twisting from side to side. Like there's the half spinal twist, which we can do together if you want. And what that does, the half spinal twist allows us to exhale more deeply than we usually do. And since the parasympathetic nervous system is strengthened on the exhale, some people who, for whatever reason, may not be exhaling fully will find more relaxation in having a practice doing the half spinal twist. It can eventually help someone to change their breathing pattern and access their relaxation more easily. So we can start off just sitting with the back straight and inhaling. As you exhale, you can raise the arms overhead and slowly from the waist up to the head, twist to the right. And you can hold on to the outside of your right thigh with your left hand, and then use your other arm to stabilize you as you slowly turn to look behind you. Not twisting too much or too little, just the right amount so that you can really feel the stretch. And you can take 3 breaths in that pose. Trying to relax the shoulders if they're a little tight by jumping, you can move them around. Good. And after your next exhalation, you can release the pose, release the twist, release the arms, come back to center, take a breath. And you can just, again, look around the room. Remember that the eyes are powerfully connected to the muscles in the back of the neck, which determine how much blood can flow into the brain. So you may be changing your mood right now as you release the pose. So we're going to do it to the other side too, since these lateral poses should always be done to one side and then the other. So you can again, inhale, raise the arms, slowly twist from the waist all the way up to the top of the head. Bring the right arm on the outside of your left thigh, stabilizing yourself with your left arm, and look behind you just enough so that you're feeling the stretch, but you're quite comfortable. And you can feel that stretch going all the way up the spine, all the way up the neck. Trying to have the shoulders relaxed. Take 2 more breaths. And you may feel yourself being able to inhale deeply. And after your next exhale, you can inhale, come around to the front, and again, look around. So your autonomic nervous system hopefully is a little bit more balanced now if it wasn't before, because you've twisted to both sides and you've done it at a pace and with an effort that was working for you. It was just right for you. Okay. Let's see what time it is. Okay. Each type of pose has its own benefit, and we're not going to do all of them. There's more than 1,000 yoga poses, and so you have quite a lot to choose from. You can eventually choose the ones that you like the best, as long as the shape and the effort and the intention is what you need to regulate your nervous system. Okay, so we can move on now to the breathing practices. And these are even more powerful for someone if they're ready for them. I mean, you have to have some degree of a healthy body, I think, to be able to get the benefit of the breathing poses. Um, so it's a lot of people work with the postures first, and then that loosens up their body and gets them used to breathing more deeply, and then they can go into the specific breathing procedures. Um, but we're just going to get a little introduction to them right now, so everyone can do them. Um, so as I said, the breath has a very powerful effect on the autonomic nervous system because this primitive brain, there to protect us, it holds on to its patterns tightly, the patterns that it learned, like in the womb or in its very early years. And some of these patterns may not be that helpful right now in our lives, but that primitive brain is holding on to them. That's its job to make sure we survive. So there are not too many ways to get at that primitive brain and have it change the way it does things, but the shape of the poses and the breathing practices are probably the two most powerful influences on the primitive brain. So some of the variables with the breathing practices are the pattern of the breath, the depth of the breath, the pace of the breath, and actually which nostril is emphasized. Because in yoga, there are very different energies that are associated with the right nostril and the left nostril. And that's even true in Western medicine. So the research has proven that the right nostril is more heating to the body and more energizing, and the left nostril is more cooling and more relaxing. So they are actually consistent with the sympathetic nervous system operating in conjunction with the right nostril, and the parasympathetic nervous system operating with the left nostril. So you're influencing it that way. Okay. I hope everyone's doing well, by the way. I hope you're feeling safe and understanding what's happening. And I'm sure that Shira would let me know if there were any huge questions from people about just what I'm talking about. Is that right, Shira?
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of positive feedback. People have just shared feedback about how different poses made them feel, but no like big questions or anything.
Great, wonderful. Okay, so the most basic breath is the three-part deep breath. It has a very regulating effect on the autonomic nervous system, as I mentioned, because each time we take one full inhale, one full exhale, we're experiencing the whole range of the autonomic nervous system. And so it is, in a balanced state for that moment. And so I'm suggesting doing the three-part deep breath initially with both nostrils open and with equal exhale and inhale. There are a lot of variations in different schools of yoga, but I just want to teach the basic practice. So we're going to breathe together. So again, you can be sitting up straight with your head straight in line with the spine. And you can just practice your normal breathing pattern now for, let's say, 2 breaths. Don't try to change it. I like to close my eyes when I'm doing the 3-part deep breath. I guess I'm used to doing that and I feel safe when I do it. But if each person can decide for themselves or see for themselves how they feel comfortable with eyes closed or open. And that's true for all of these yoga practices. So, just for the effect of teaching, I'm going to divide the breath into three parts. So now you can exhale, and as you inhale, you can bring the air only into the belly, like that lower part, lower part, like below your digestive stomach, just that little belly. You can place your hands there if you'd like to feel it going in and out. And just take 3 breaths on your own, feeling the expansion and contraction of your belly. And after your third exhale, you can let the breath return to normal. While I was doing it, I felt my shoulders relaxing and a few muscles in my torso relaxing. And I could tune in much more easily to what was happening in my body. When I'm talking this way, or when anyone is putting their attention outward, it's very hard to focus also on exactly what's happening inside your body. So, so the breathing practice gives you a chance to go into what I would call a more parasympathetic state, where you're focused on the inside. So that was the first part of the 3-part breath. So we're going to inhale again now. You can exhale, and then when you inhale again, bring the air into the belly and then into the rib cage, feeling the ribs expanding out to the side. And you can again place your hands on your ribs to feel the movement. So try that on your own 3 times. And after your third exhale, you can release that. You can take your hands away. Take a couple of regular breaths. Look around if you'd like, feeling the contact between the back of your body and the chair or the couch, soles of the feet and the floor, increasing our body awareness. And then we're going to do all 3 parts. So you can exhale, and on the inhale, inhaling into the abdomen, rib cage, and then the chest, feeling the chest rise just a little bit, and doing that on your own 3 times. And you can, on your next exhale, you can let that go. Again, notice what that was like for you. I think I noticed my shoulders and back relaxing even a little bit more. So the feeling of inhale is more subtle as you get higher up into the chest. So I'm not sure if everybody felt it. It can take some practice. Also, I found when I started to do breathing practices that I got in touch with uncomfortable feelings that had been stored in my abdomen that I sort of was keeping out of my conscious awareness. So sometimes when I did deep breathing in the beginning, I would start to cry, or there'd be memories coming up, or it was quite a process of releasing things inside of myself, and that was good. But it's good to have a little guidance with it also, if that's happening. You know, um, hmm. So every time one way that the exhale works is that the vagus nerve, which I mentioned, is a communicator with the brain. It goes right down the front of the body, and so when you exhale, you compress it in a certain way that it is programmed to send a message of relaxation, like an electrical message of relaxation up to the brain. And that's an amazing thing about the human body, is that there's so many different ways that it sends messages of relaxation or of threat, both. But there are many subtle ways that you can relax your body. Too many for me to have mentioned in this talk. But for example, one example is that if you can relax your tongue, that also sends a message to the brain that everything's okay in the body, and then the brain sends a message down to the whole body that it can relax. Um, so that's powerful. Um, there are other breathing practices which are very wonderful. One of them is alternate nostril breathing, which is the 3-part deep breath, but it's done through one nostril at a time. And I don't think I'm going to teach that one today, but I can show you for a moment. You may have done it in a yoga class, but what you do is you make this configuration with your hand. It's a special configuration. You place it in front of your nose with both nostrils open. And as you exhale, you close the right nostril. I mean, on the screen, it may look like the left nostril. And then you exhale through the left, inhale through the left, and then use the last 2 fingers to block off the left nostril. You do the same thing with the right. You exhale through the right, inhale through the right, and block it off and switch. You do that over and over again. So it's not only the switching that's important, it's the way the breath is exhaled. Ideally, it would be exhaled slowly and quietly. So in a calming kind of way. So this is a wonderful breath because, as you can see, it balances it stimulates and balances the right nostril and the left nostril alternately. So that means the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are balanced over and over again. And people who do this for a period of time can actually feel that. I mean, I have felt that many times, like sitting in the dentist office or something like that. If it's possible to do that practice, the nervousness goes away for a period of time. It's not permanent, and it's not 100%, but I definitely have seen that benefit. So in my recovery from my depression, it was so empowering to know that I knew how to relax my body. I knew how to change my experience of life. Um, it gave me a whole new way to live, really. And I'm so happy that my life has sort of fulfilled the wishes that I had for it, because my greatest wish back in 1970 really was to be able to, if I ever felt well again, which is what I said to myself, to be able to turn around and bring what I had learned out to other people who were suffering. And so that is my satisfaction in having stayed with yoga so long and being a witness to this wonderful embrace of yoga, not only by the society in general, but by the mental health field. Um, it's been really wonderful. And it gives great hope to that people can be in charge of their own health. They don't, like in some cases, may be able to rely on that more than medication and join with other people and um, live a good life. It doesn't cost, once you learn the yoga postures and breathing practices, it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require any special equipment. Um, so I feel very, very grateful. Anyway, there are other breathing practices, and there are lots of health benefits of them. I think I'd like to teach one to you because it's fun. And I'm not sure how close we are to the question and answer time, but I'm just going to keep on talking until Shira tells me to stop. Um, okay,
Yeah,
so
we
yeah,
have like maybe like 5 more minutes,
okay, great,
5 to
great,
10. Yeah.
that's great. All right, so this is Brahmari. That's the name of the breath, and it translates as meaning bee in Sanskrit, and you'll see why. It's performed by humming like a bee while exhaling slowly. And as with the Om, it vibrates and stimulates key structures which the vagus nerve connects to. The facial muscles, the tongue, the eyes, the vocal cords, middle ear. So that's what's happening, enlivening all those areas and allowing them to relax and send out a message of well-being, which other people can feel, which helps them to get regulated. So, anyways, to do Brahmari, I think maybe, well, no, I think we'll all do it together. So, what we're going to do is we're going to inhale deeply. Don't do it yet. And then we're going to placing the tongue lightly against the top of the mouth and having the mouth closed, we're just going to hum. So, let's do it together. Exhaling, and we do it 3 times. Exhaling, inhaling, and start humming. Mm. 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 Excuse me. Um, so at the bottom of the third exhale, you can let the practice go. There are other more powerful ways to do that, but I'm going to stick with the basic bee breath right now. This is a wonderful practice. It's being experimented with, I understand, for people with obsessive compulsive disorder because it eliminates thoughts. When you're humming, you really can't think about anything. So it creates a new space in your experience, in your mind. And this breath increases nitric oxide in your body. Uh, to a very high degree. And nitric oxide is very healthy for your circulation and for the function of your cells. So anything that can help the body to be healthier also affects your mental health. It just goes together, which is something that our mental health system doesn't really emphasize, never really knew that much about, but it's true. Um, so there are other practices. There's yoga nidra, which is a very deep relaxation practice. And there's meditation, of course. In my opinion, in my experience, the chanting and the postures and the breathing are the most effective to help to overcome different mental and emotional discomforts or conditions because they're directly working with the body. The yoga nidra, deep relaxation, works partly with the body, and then partly it asks the experiencer to go beyond their body and just dwell in a peaceful place, which is more disembodied. And I think that can be difficult for some people who are recovering from difficult experiences. And then, as far as meditation goes, that is even more of a disembodied practice where you're sitting still, usually, and just using your mind to watch your thoughts, watch your body sensations. But there are forms of meditation which are embodied, and those are the ones I recommend for people who are recovering from difficult, troubled experiences. For example, walking meditation, where you have your attention partly on your inner experience as you walk very, very slowly. And then another, what I consider to be meditation, is listening to sounds. It's a whole branch of yoga called nada yoga, where if you listen to certain Sanskrit sounds or even just music, calming music, it will have a very, very beneficial effect on you, and you don't have to do anything. The music will kind of do you, and give your body the vagus nerve and the nervous system a kind of rest and balance, because that's what we're after. So that I think that's what I have to say right now. I do have a website, which is my name, www.joannlutz.com. And I have a book, Trauma Healing in the Yoga Zone. And I'm delighted to offer you what I can. Um, so, so what do you think, Shira? Is this a good time to break?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and start the Q&A session, if you'd like. Um,
I don't know if anybody has any questions, though.
So I do see one question in the chat. And then I also just want to say you're welcome to like ask to unmute. And I will unmute you and you can speak and ask questions or type questions in the chat. But our first question is if while breathing, stretching, exercise, or yoga results in tingling, feeling of nose, numbness, or part of face? Is it a red flag or the body or system communicating that something is physiologically off or wrong?
Hmm. So, so was it tingling? What were the other words was it just tingling?
Well,
Yeah, just repeat the beginning of the question to me. Okay.
yeah, if while deep breathing, stretching, exercise, or yoga
Mhm.
results in tingling, feeling of nose, numbness, or part of face.
Right.
That was the first part.
Sure. Well, tingling can indicate something is going really well. I mean, that would be the general um, reaction that I would have, is that it's just the feeling of energy moving. However, the numbness would is more concern to me. Um, so because there's the only problem I can think of is if someone is breathing deeply and or shallowly and quickly, then they may be hyperventilating, and that will change the balance of carbon dioxide in their body, and that could be the reason why they're feeling the tingling. So I would ask if the person was doing like a series of short uh, inhale, rapid inhales and exhales during that time. Um,
Thank you. We also have another question. Do palms up, palms down on the legs mean anything? Up for energy, down for resting and digesting?
oh, that's an interesting question. Um, well, I think palms up definitely is kind of an invitation for energies from to go up and like to merge um, with higher energies, whatever they are. I'm not an expert on those. So, but it's a very subtle thing. But I would say yes. Um, I don't think they affect the autonomic nervous system so much as the subtle nerves of the body, the subtle energy of the body, and so it's not so related to what I was talking about. But it's such an interesting question. That person, I'm wondering if that person has a very deep yoga practice.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that question and for your answer to it. We do have another question. Any mudras that you recommend more for releasing trauma during yoga or meditation?
Hmm. Well, that's I actually I have focused my work on the breathing practices, the postures, the relaxation, and the meditation. I really haven't focused on mudras. So I honestly, I'm really not the best person to ask. I think Amy Weintraub might be a better person, who is also one of the leaders in the field. um, she has the book Yoga for Depression, and she uses mudras in her work. By the way, mudras are hand positions, and each finger means something in the yogic system. So they have an effect on the body's energy.
Thank you. Um, then we have a question asking if the recording of this discussion is going to be made available to us after. And yes, we will send out the recording, and it will be posted on our website. We'll also send a certificate of attendance.
Mhm.
Um,
So I would love to if know more about if anyone has been using yoga to help their recovery, or however they see their process. If they've run into any problems with it, if they have any suggestions, I would really enjoy hearing more. Or also just more reactions, more responses to what I spoke about. If people might be wanting to try it, um, I'd really enjoy more more dialogue about this.
so we have some comments. I use meditation, not necessarily yoga. It's been the best thing for my anxiety. If I don't meditate that day, my friends and family know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Someone else said, I have slowly incorporated yoga practice into my recovery from PTSD, and it has helped me to self-regulate much more quickly and effectively now.
Great. Yeah. And I mean, I'm curious from that person if you were able to do that in yoga classes, or was it with a one teacher or a therapist, or did you do it on your own? I'm curious about these things. I wish we were all sitting in a room having a conversation. Yeah. But I may not find out today.
Um, that person said it was a mix of all these types.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm curious if there's one thing I said or one practice that I did today that feels more exciting to you, or, that's these are some of my questions. More valuable.
we have a comment saying after this webinar, I am going to find somewhere I can find someone who teaches trauma sensitive yoga, and I am going to look up the book Yoga for Depression.
Great.
Someone else said, I didn't realize that certain postures and breathing exercises affect specific parasympathetic and sympathetic systems.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's kind of new information, maybe in the past 10 years, I would say. Um,
For sure. And we have another comment saying, I've been reluctant to chant, but I tried it today and I noticed how much it does add to the relaxation experience. So I plan to add it into my practice more now. Amazing.
mhm. Yeah. Well, that leads me to be curious why that person didn't want to add chant, but again, I don't know if they want to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I do just want to invite people to unmute. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to do that, and I can like invite you to unmute. And yeah, feel free to speak aloud because we do have some time for discussion. And it sounds like Joanne, you're wanting more of a back and forth. So I really invite people to unmute or come on camera.
Yeah. Can Yeah, I can see a few people. I can't see like the whole group. Of course, there's a lot of people here, I guess. Uh-huh.
So this is Barbara Myers,
Mhm.
and I just wanted to say that I had a hard time recovering from COVID a couple of years ago, and it affected me emotionally. And I tried all of my uh, usual techniques for getting better, and none of them were helping. But I had a yoga tape, and I played that and did that, and that was the only thing that helped. And I'd
Well,
had no idea why it helped, but
yeah,
you're really helping me understand that. So thank you.
that's great. Thank you for telling me. Uh,
Yeah.
it's wonderful. Uh, yeah, I know people who've healed themselves from very serious conditions doing different aspects of yoga. Um, yeah, thank you. Because I always feel like we can all help each other, in a peer kind of way in a talk like this. So that's why I'm, inviting people to talk about their experience. I see little notes on the bottom of the screen. um, so I've gone around the country training psychotherapists for about 5 years in these techniques, which I brought to you today. And I may have, so I taught, they had uh, sessions on practicing teaching them. So some of them aren't yoga teachers, but they know how to bring yoga into the session. I like to, if you're in a psychotherapy session or a counseling session, I like to use yoga when, let's say someone is in the middle of talking about a very disturbing event from the past, and they're starting to get dysregulated. Like the therapist or other people in a group can tell because their face starts getting more tense and their voice changes and their posture might change. And so that's a time to stop and interrupt the narrative, the story, and take some breaths, do some stretching. Like, I feel that if someone is aware and stops when they're dysregulated and does some regulating activity, that over a period of time, the nervous system itself will change its pattern, and it kind of teaches itself not to get so dysregulated, and therefore it's a kind of healing that is permanent.
Thank you. That's so beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, we have some more comments. All that you have shared was effective here today, and I will practice to reflect on how it affects my nervous system. I appreciate it deeply, Joann.
Oh, thank you.
And another comment that says, I appreciate the emphasis on balance, that sympathetic and parasympathetic are both valuable and useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. A lot of yoga is more sympathetically oriented. In other words, uh, you know, a lot of movement, a lot of activity, a lot of external focus, which is great for like young, healthy people. But it works with the muscles, and has a strengthening effect, and it's very invigorating. But it's it's not may not be the right thing to heal from some uh, difficult life experiences. Yeah. Well, I guess we can all meditate for a few minutes. Um, I think that would be a good thing to do. Um, so, yeah, we can, sit up straight and begin to focus on the breath. Again, watching the breath as it flows in and out. Notice if it changes while you're being aware of it. Notice if your eyes want to close or if you want to keep them open. So you can focus on the flow of the breath. You can watch your thoughts if you'd like. If your mind starts to wander or gets too busy, you can choose one healing word and repeat that word silently, as in rhythm with your breath. Some people find it helpful to count their breaths, and other people don't want to think about anything. So you can see what works for you. But if you are counting, let's all take 8 more breaths together. And at the next exhalation, you can let the breath return to normal. And look around the room. Notice if you feel any different than you did just a little while ago. So thank you so much, Shira, for having me here. Thank all of you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I think this was so informative, and yeah, we have so much positive feedback. Um, so yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Joanne, for presenting. We can go ahead and wrap up. I did just want to share, we will have our next webinar on December 13th. That's a Friday, and it's going to be on the topic of weight stigma. So I hope to see you all there as well. And we'll send out the recording and certificate for this webinar in the next few days or week or so. So thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Shira, can I save the chat? I don't know how to do that really.
Yes, you should be able to, there should be like a dot dot dot.
Oh,
Um,
on the chat?
yeah, and
Yeah,
then
there it is.
you got it.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I can read everyone's comments.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, well, have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.